Many people are realizing that we are very, very close to the end of time. You probably were surprised, as I was, when COVID-19 struck, and with all the restrictions and everything just like a bolt out of the blue. Well, we've been told that the last movements will be rapid ones, right? And this certainly is true of this crisis. In light of that, there are some very important things that we need to consider, and I want to talk to you about one of them tonight. I've entitled this, "What is Your Focus?" And it can't be both of these very well. It has to be one or the other, man's words or God's words. What are you spending most of your time with? Man's words or God's words? It's too late if we want to really get to heaven. It's too late to make a focus of man's words. And we need to be focusing on God's words. So let's take a look at some of what what God has said upon this point. In Counsels on Health, page 253, it says, "One sentence of Scripture is of more value than 10,000 of man's ideas or arguments." Does it make sense if you believe that sentence? Does it make sense to focus on God's words? Wow, what a difference. One sentence that man has written or that man speaks is God has so much more value from one sentence of Scripture. If man gives you 10,000 of his ideas or his arguments, it's not worth as much as one sentence of Scripture. Like I hear people saying in the last few years, it's a no-brainer. The book Education, page 128, talks about science. You know, science is such a big thing in this country. Science is ever discovering new wonders, but she brings from her research nothing that rightly understood, and that's the key. Science brings a lot of things from its research, but if it is rightly understood, there's nothing that conflicts with divine revelation. The book of nature and the written word shed light upon each other. Now that brings in another key point. When we study science, we better check it out with the inspired writings. When we listen to theological arguments, we better check it out with the Word of God. When we listen to classes of human ideas, we better check it out to see if it agrees with the Word of God. Because we just could be spending too much time with man's ideas and getting ourselves way off the track and be unprepared for the things that are going to happen here at the end of time. And from Counsels to Teachers, page 423, man's words, if of any value, echo the words of God. So if they don't echo the words of God, they don't have any value. In the education of youth, they should never take the place of the divine word. We could spend some time looking at that. Unfortunately, the inspired writings are becoming a smaller and smaller portion of education today. And even the books don't bother to check out whether what they're saying agrees with the Bible or not, and yet they are educating the youth in so many different areas. So here we have some very interesting statements that are intended to help us really focus on what God has said. But that wasn't the first instruction we had. We go back to the first writer of the Bible, to Moses. And we're going to look in Deuteronomy 4, verse 2 and onward. He has been given quite a bit of instruction for the people, and he now gives them a warning. He said, "Ye shall not add unto the word which I command you." Now, the adding is dangerous because it generally does not agree with what God said. It's something additional. It's something beyond. Now, it doesn't mean a further explanation is wrong about what God said. But to add something that he didn't say, this is dangerous. And it's being done very frequently, often by even people that you may think you should respect, but they add to the Word of God with their ideas. And then the second thing he warned them, neither shall ye diminish aught from it. So you're not supposed to be lower down in your practice of the Word than what it said. You're not to go beyond the Word and practice things that the Word didn't say to do, but neither are you to be lax and not come up to what the Word says we should do. And that theme goes through the Bible in several places. Now here's the reason, that ye may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me, that ye should do so in the land whither ye go to possess it. So it said, I have faithfully passed on to you what God has revealed to me, and now it's important that you will practice all those things that God said. But you know what? A lot of people don't know what God said. So how can we practice it if we don't even know what we're supposed to do? Or if man's words have caused us to argue against the Word of God in what God asked us to do, how are we going to practice it? We're not. We're going to rise up in rebellion against it if somebody tries to, get us to do it or tries to awaken us to our duty. And we get offended and upset at them because they're bringing up what God asked us to do. Then he goes even further in verses 6 and 7. It says, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. Now, if you stop to think about what he's saying, can the people take any credit for this? No. All they can say is, well, we're just doing what God told us to do. That's all. We're not wise in that sense. We don't have a high IQ, maybe even. We don't have anything to brag about. But we serve a God that knows what we should be doing. And we're simply doing what he told us to do. And as a result of that, other nations were going to look at Israel and say, wow, these people are smart. They're really wise. Look what they're doing. I think somehow that's happening to John MacArthur, that people are looking at him and saying, wow, he's smart. And God is blessing him in the path that he's on. But then there's a second reason why they were going to be considered wise. For what nation is there so great, who hath God so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? Now the two are connected. God is not able to bless the disobedient. Even if we don't know that we're supposed to do it and we're not doing it, he can't bless that. He can only bless obedience. Now, it's not that we earned, the blessing. We got the right to have the blessing through Calvary and through what Jesus did for us. But it can only be given to the degree that he's capable, to the degree that he's capable of giving it. Sorry, I forgot to bring any. Oh, here's some water. This blessing comes to those that will follow the first half and do what God asked them to do, and it enables God to be able to come closer to his people and thus bring blessings that he couldn't bring any other way. And if there ever was a time when we need God's blessing, it's now. From now until the end, we need God's blessing like we've never needed it before. We're going to be facing, this is just the first one. We're going to be facing more and more things. And they may come upon us as big a surprise as this one. I don't know how they'll come. But they're going to come. Now, I thought I'd share a couple of examples that I've read about. Edward Sutherland was asked after a period of time in working in our colleges, he was asked to be the president of Walla Walla College. And one of the things that he seemed to understand is that what God said about education is more important than what all kinds of people have said, including many Seventh-day Adventists. And so what he did was he set up a series of faculty retreats. And when they went on the retreat, they took the spirit of prophecy with them, and they read and studied and discussed, how do we put this in practice at Walla Walla? When they came back to school, they would change the program so that it would be more in harmony with what God said. And as a result of this practice, the education was moving in the right direction. And as another result, at a general conference, he was elected to be the president of Battle Creek College. So for a while, he was president of two colleges. And, he was putting into effect what he had learned there. Well, as time went on, he irritated enough people that, he threw in the towel and decided he'd quit. And he thought maybe Ellen White would try to talk him out of it, but she didn't. Instead, God directed him to Madison. And Madison was a place that became world-renowned for the kind of education that they were offering. Why? Well, because he did what God said through Moses and Deuteronomy. And it led to this tremendous outcome. Just to give you one little story of what happened in his journey, at Battle Creek College, God had given instructions that it wasn't supposed to be in the city. But they had built the school in the city anyway. So, of course, he came to the board. And he told the board that he wanted to move the school out of the city. And the Holy Spirit must have been with him, because he convinced the board to authorize a move out of the city. But he knew the board. And so, this is the story I was told anyway. He went over to the window and he waved his handkerchief out the window, and his faculty was watching, because it was an agreed upon signal that the board had approved the move. And so they packed up the school as fast as they could. They put it on the train and sent it out. Well, the next day, the board was called back again, and a decision was made, or attempted to be made, to keep the school in the city. And Sutherland said to them, "It's too late, it's already gone." So, the Lord helped him to, that's when it ended up in what we used to call Emmanuel Missionary College, and later Andrews was developed on the same property. Another person is Dr. Kellogg. Now, in today's world, Dr. Kellogg is kind of looked down upon because of his apostasy. But previous to his apostasy, he was one of the people in the church that believed that you should read what God said and do it. And so, one time I was reading about his philosophy. Medical science is constantly advancing too, and all kinds of new treatments and everything is coming up. And so he was defending his method to somebody, and he said, "What I do is when a new treatment comes along, I check the spirit of prophecy. If the spirit of prophecy is not in favor of this particular treatment, then," he says, "I don't use it at all. But the other doctors, they don't know. They think it might be a good one, so they jump on it and they're using it, and it takes them about 5 years to find out, oh, this is really not working. It's not a good treatment. We'll give this one up." On the other hand, he said, when I find that a treatment is in harmony with what God said, he said, I jump on it right away. And he said, many doctors, they're not sure. It's a new treatment. They're not sure they want to use it, and they wait about 5 years before they start using it. And he said, that's the way I have followed my practice. And he was known throughout the world. In many ways, he was driven out of the church by the Adventist pastors. That's not all there is to it, but that is a huge factor. And we lost the most amazing physician, and he got that way due to doing what we're talking about here tonight. In the youth instructor of August 6, 1903, the lesson that the youth of today most need to learn. Does that make it important? If it's the lesson that the student needs to learn, the youth most need to learn, here it is the importance of seeking with all the heart to know God, so that personal relationship, that personal experience with God is the foundation of everything. So that's the first thing it mentions. But the second thing is, and to obey him implicitly. Now, if we don't have the first one, if we don't have that deep heart relationship with Jesus, then we will argue against some of what he said for us to do. And so that is the most important. But then following right behind that is when you read something that tells you how you should live or how you should act or whatever, that's what you should do. And you may have to seek help to do it, but that is the smart way to go. Apparently, David had this experience. Now, we know he made a big mistake, but generally his life is recorded here in Psalm 119. He said in verse 2 and then 14 and 24, "Blessed are they that keep his testimonies." All of us like to be blessed, don't we? Well, he's explaining, how do you get blessed? To keep his testimonies, and that seek him with the whole heart. I have rejoiced in the way of thy testimonies. You know, this year we're going to celebrate 50 years in self-supporting work. And I've seen a lot of people come through self-supporting work, but I haven't seen very many that felt like David did. So many want to argue against some of what God said, some of what he has revealed to us. They don't want to do it, and they want to find some way to convince you that they shouldn't have to do it and that you're wrong. Even though, if you read it, yeah, that's what it says. Well, I think we need to have more people like David. He said, "I have rejoiced in the way of thy testimonies, as much as in all riches." If you found $100 million worth of gold, would you get excited? I think most people would. But David said, when I discover what God has told us to do and the benefits I know that are going to come from it, it's like I just found a pile of gold. Thy testimonies also are my delight and my counselors. So he said, when I read it, I know that's the smart thing to do, and so I let it be my counselor. In verses 36 and 7, he may have had a struggle with some things. And you know, that's not bad. I mean, our human nature is not cast in the direction of doing what God has told us to do. So our human nature is going to rise up against it, and especially in the beginning. But he made a prayer. He said, "Incline my heart unto thy testimonies." In other words, Lord, help me to really see the value of what you've said for me to do. And not to covetousness. Covetousness is broader in this passage than just money. Turn away mine eyes from beholding vanity. Where are you going to get the time to know what God wants you to do? You're going to have to turn away from a lot of vanity, which is man's words that aren't based on the Word of God. That's vanity. It can come through the television, through the internet. It can come through class. It can come through whatever. But if it's vanity, he said, Lord, don't let me get wrapped up in vanity. Let me turn away to that which is really valuable. Turn away mine eyes from beholding vanity, and quicken thou me in thy way. In other words, I need help, Lord, to really move along your pathway, and I'm asking you to help me to move rapidly down that pathway. And there is no time in Earth's history where we better move rapidly than right now. Because if we don't, we're going to be caught short. It's going to be too late, and we won't have time to do it. Another translation may be helpful on this. The New Century Version says, "Make me want to keep your rules instead of wishing for riches." In other words, make it a priority in my heart to seek to practice the rules that you've given me. Keep me from looking at worthless things. Let me live by your word. I thought that was a pretty good way of putting the message that's in there. A little more from this Psalm, verses 58 and 9. I entreated thy favor with my whole heart. Be merciful unto me according to thy word. I thought on my ways and turned my feet unto thy testimonies. Notice, he found some things that he was doing that he shouldn't be doing. And so he prayed again, and he said, Lord, please bless me so that I can see the value of this and practice it. And as I saw that my ways were not what was supposed to be, then he prayed, Lord, help me to really want to follow what you said for me to do. And verses 97 to 100, oh, how love I thy law. Now, some people think this is only talking about the Ten Commandments, but everything that God has told us to do is traceable back to the Ten Commandments. Ten Commandments are just a very short description of everything that's supposed to happen. And most people can't see the details in it, but if we really could study it under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, we would see the details in there. But God has been merciful, and he's given a lot of details in the Bible, and even more details in the writings of Ellen White, so that we don't miss anything. Then he says, it is my meditation all the day. So the highest priority in his life was to think and seek to practice what God said. Thou, through thy commandments, hast made me wiser than mine enemies. Well, that would be a blessing when you had to go into battle, right? To be wiser than our enemies. Are we going to have enemies? And more of them pretty soon? You know, God is able to help his children to outsmart the enemy. And David experienced that, and so he said, what I learned from the inspired writings made me wiser than mine enemies, for they are ever with me. I have more understanding than all my teachers. That's interesting. Whatever school you go to where the teachers don't do this, then you will be wiser than all your teachers. For thy testimonies are my meditation. I understand more than the ancients. So now he says, all those older men, the ones that are, not too far from the grave, I know more than they do. Why? Because I made it a priority not to study man's words, but to study God's words. Now let's look at a few amplifications of this idea. We can see it's deeply rooted in the Bible. Education, page 123. The Bible contains all the principles that men need to understand in order to be fitted either for this life or for the life to come. Wow. You mean for any career, any type of work that we're supposed to do while we're here on earth, that all the principles that we need to know are in the Bible? Well, how come it has such a small place? It needs to have its rightful place. And if the school doesn't do it, then you have to do it. Somebody has to put the priority where it belongs. But then, of course, it's easier to realize that it has the principles that we need for the life to come. And these principles may be understood by how many? By all. So it's not beyond our ability, aided by the Holy Spirit. Education 124. In searching out the various parts and studying their relationship, the highest faculties of the human mind are called into intense activity. I was talking about the Bible, that when we're trying to, we see a little bit of information here, a little more over here and somewhere else, and we're trying to figure out how it all fits together. This develops the human mind more than any other study. Why? Because God is really the one behind all of this, and he knows how to develop our mind. Now, one of the sad mistakes of education today is that education is primarily involved in giving people facts. But you know what? You don't have to go to school. Just get on the internet. You can get all the facts you want to get. It's no big deal to give people facts anymore, especially. It might have been bigger years ago. But we need schools that develop people's mind, improves the capacity of their ability to think and to accomplish what God has in mind for them, and to understand what the principles are that will bring success. That's what we need. No one can engage in such study without developing mental power. So in other words, you're developing a bigger brain. And therefore, when you look for the facts, you will get more, and you will understand more, and you will be rising above all the rest, because they're not doing that. Very few are doing that today. And this is what God had in mind for his children. Also, education, page 124. And not alone in searching out truth and bringing it together does the mental value of Bible study consist. So that's a repeat of the one we studied already. It consists also in the effort required to grasp the themes presented. In other words, God has made it so that some things are difficult to dig out. And most people don't get to that because they're not spending enough time. But when a person does work on that, it expands their mind. So there's two ways in which the mind is expanded when the individual is focusing on the Word of God. The mind occupied with commonplace matters only becomes dwarfed and enfeebled. And so we're developing in our society today a lot of copycats. They watch what somebody else is doing. It looks like it's succeeding, so they copy that and do the same thing. But what God needs is people that can think differently and can move according to his word, and to come up with things that will be better than what other people are doing. And so God has prepared a way for that to take place. Now don't get discouraged, because the more years of education you've had, the harder it is for this process to take place. But it can still take place if we are persistent. In the book Education, page 126, it says the creative energy that called the worlds into existence is in the Word of God. Now here is the second reason that Moses was given. When God is near to his people, that person has creative energy at work in their life, which will cause them to be able to become like Jesus. It will cause them to understand things and to see through things, and lots of blessings from this. This word imparts power. It begets life. And notice this, every command is a promise. Most people are looking at what God told us to do from the wrong perspective. They're saying, oh, do we have to do that? I don't really think we need to do that, especially in our society today. We don't need to do that. That's the way most people are looking at it. But if we look at it correctly, we see that every command is a promise. We're going to get a blessing out of it if we practice this, and so will others. Every command is a promise, accepted by the will, received into the soul. So there are some ifs. Has to be accepted by the will, has to be received into the soul. It brings with it the life of the infinite one. Can you ask for anything more than that? To have God living his life through us? It transforms the nature and recreates the soul in the image of God. I think I'm going to skip some of this because I want to get to one other point. When we talk about the Bible, I think in general everyone says yes. Not everyone's doing it, but everyone says yes, we believe that that would be true. But when it comes to the writings given through Ellen White, which is the testimony of Jesus, a lot less people feel that this works with that. So let's read just a couple of thoughts here in closing. Second Testimonies, page 605. She's speaking to Adventists. You are not familiar with the scriptures. If you had made God's word your study with a desire to reach the Bible standard and attain to Christian perfection, you would not have needed the testimonies. And they want to stop right there. And their reaction is, well then, we don't really need the writings of Ellen White. We have our Bible. She herself said, if you had studied your Bible like you should, you wouldn't need my writings. But they don't read on. It is because you have neglected to acquaint yourselves with God's inspired book that he has sought to reach you by simple, direct testimonies, calling your attention to the words of inspiration which you had neglected to obey, and urging you to fashion your lives in accordance with its pure and elevated teachings. Now, if you look closely at that and ponder that, what is being said is that my writings are an expansion of the Bible. I didn't add anything. I didn't take anything away from the Bible. It is the Bible explained in detail. Now, to put it bluntly, when you are studying what God revealed through her, you are studying the Bible. And if we think that we don't need to study it or don't need to practice it, we're really saying we don't need to practice what the Bible says. The written testimonies are not to give new light, but to impress vividly upon the heart the truths of inspiration already revealed. Man's duty to God and to his fellow man has been distinctly specified in God's word, yet but few of you are obedient to the light given. So again, she says to Seventh-day Adventists, it is in the Bible, but you didn't dig it out. You didn't find it in the Bible, and so you were not obeying it, and God has been been good to give it to you again in more detail and in a simpler fashion. Additional truth is not brought out, but God has, through the testimonies, simplified the great truths already given, and in his own chosen way brought them before the people to awaken and impress the mind with them, that all may be left without excuse. As you think about that, a person may say, well, I don't see that in the Bible, so I don't need to do that. But God says, I spelled it out in the writings of Ellen White, and that has taken away your excuse. If you couldn't see it in the Bible, shame on you, because it's in there. And therefore, you have no excuse, because it's been made so plain. Now, to explain the relation of the two, how do the two work together? It says on page 606, as the Word of God is walled in with these books and pamphlets. So she starts with an illustration. She's got the Bible in the middle, and around the Bible, she's got her books. Her books are walling in the Bible. Why? Because they come from the Bible. So has God walled you in with reproofs, counsel, warnings, and encouragements. So her books are walling in the Bible, and then what was said in her writings are walling in the believer. Here you are crying before God in the anguish of your souls for more light. So some people apparently were pleading, Lord, please help us to understand things better. And notice what the answer is. The Lord has walled you, let's see. Here you are crying before God in the anguish of your souls for more light. I am authorized from God to tell you that not another ray of light through the testimonies will shine upon your pathway until you make a practical use of the light already given. So here's another interesting principle, that if we don't practice the light we have, then we can't get more until we're practicing what we already know. And we could be pleading for all we're worth, but we're not going to get it if we're not practicing. Unfortunately, many of us know more than what we're practicing. But this is not safe anymore. As we go into the end, we need to practice everything we know and be pleading with God to reveal more. But he's going to say, I already told you in the writings of Ellen White, so you better study it there, in addition to the Bible. Then it says, the Lord has walled you about with light, but you have not appreciated the light. You have trampled upon it. While some have despised the light, others have neglected it. So here's the reactions. And don't let somebody with the wrong reaction affect you. You see, you don't want to be one that despises the light. At least study more before you despise it to make sure you're not wrong. Check it out. Then other people just neglect it. They don't bother to really check it out. Or the third group followed it, but indifferently. So, sometimes he did it, sometimes he didn't. They didn't really worry about it. You don't want to be in those three groups. If you want to make it through these last days, you want to be in the next one. A few have set their hearts to obey the light which God has been pleased to give them. And so that would be my appeal tonight to you. Number one, check yourself out. What are you spending most of your time with? Is it with the words of men, or is it with the words of God? And of course, you can't be studying while you're working, but the time that you have, what are you spending most of your time with? And second, it's time for every one of God's people to really do what David did and say, Lord, this is going to be a hard one for me, but I can see this is what your word says, and so please help me to practice it. And those which will set their hearts to obey God are going to make it through these final times when we have more than what we're facing right now. The tide is turning, I think, in this country. It doesn't seem to be in very many countries. But John MacArthur said, we've been lied to. That's what he said. And I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that in listening to man's words, we ended up doing a lot of damage listening to man's words. But it's time that we not fall for that, because we've spent so much time with God's words. And to get the best results from studying God's word, we have to practice it, and then He can shine more light, and we practice that and more, and so on, until we become, as one place says it, men wondered at. And that includes you ladies too. Men wondered at. This is what God is planning to do for His true children here in the end of time.